So welcome everybody to our very first cloud tips and tricks webinar, Mastering More4apps, Essential Tips for the ERP Cloud Toolbox. I am Stephanie and I will be moderating today's webinar. Since this is a quick fire webinar, I just want to go over a few things as fast as possible before handing it over to our host. And our host today is Rachana Haste. She is a solution specialist here at More4apps, and many of you might already know her. Rachana's Oracle story started just after she finished studying electronics engineering in India. Following her degree, she moved to the US for Oracle eBusiness Suite implementation and support services and has been working in the space for over 15 years. Her knowledge of both EBS and now cloud has taken her across many different customers across the world, helping implement various modules. Rachana also serves as a board member on multiple Oracle users special interest groups. So some little rules before we get started. After Rachana presents, we will begin our Q&A portion. During the session, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box down below, and we will only answer them during the Q&A portion to allow everyone to hear the entirety of the presentation and the hop off at the end if needed. We will hit every question if possible, and if you have follow-up questions, I will go over those rules too. And then after the webinar, there will also be a survey. Since this is the very first rendition of this Cloud Tips and Tricks webinar series, your feedback is very much appreciated. And like always, we will send out the recording after the webinar. But let's get to what we're here for. So Rachana, you can take it away.
Thank you, Stephanie. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you are, to the very global, vibrant user community or prospective user community of More4apps. And I hope you're already ahead of the day's work using More4apps productivity tools, gaining back some valuable time from mundane activities like data management in Oracle. So I welcome you to this session where I hope you can pick up some basic training tips and tricks and sharpen that efficiency advantage that you have. And what I've done is I've just collected together all the little things that users find as a revelation when I'm walking through training or helping them get up and running on their More4apps Toolbox on their instance. So I've just collected all of them together and I'm going to walk through those today. And I'm going to just pick up a very representative, generic kind of a cloud integrator, the projects integrator, which I think many of you might already be having. So we'll just walk through a simple scenario of downloading some existing projects, updating task dates, and then performing the upload again. So let me start sharing my screen and maybe I'll just save the bandwidth on my video. So let's get up and running. All right, so I'll take over your share, replacing the current share. All right. And that should take me to the projects module. All right. So this is the projects module. I'm already logged in using the ribbon up top here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to download some projects. I'm going to trim down columns and make this into a nice tailored trim down sheet. And then I'm going to update a few things on it. Okay, so as you can see, this is the project's layout. And it's a flexible layout. I have a lot of columns right now. I'm going to walk through trimming it down in a very incremental kind of fashion. Okay, so there's a lot of task level columns here. You can see that there is a task start date, actual start date, finish date. There's a date and there is a planned start date and finish date. So let's walk through. Since I'm already connected, I can just put a project number in there and go in and hit the download. As some of you might already know, there are multiple ways to download or extract from the cloud instance that I'm connected to. It's by sheet or by form. The form gives you a few search parameters, whereas the sheet, you can just point to the search parameters on the sheet. I can list 100 projects, 10 projects, whatever number of projects, and then I can point to those and say download via sheet, which is what I'm doing now. This is a little large kind of a project, 400 tasks, I believe. So I'll just keep it to one. Even if there is multiple, you might have seen some of you who are already using it know that it can function the exact same, retrieving multiple as well. Okay, so now it will retrieve all of these columns which could be quite expanded. And then looking at the data, we can take a call that, not everything is needed. When we were downloading, we just entered the project number, but you could enter any of these pointed columns and a combination thereof as well. So I could leave the project number blank. I could download via sheet by just putting an organization, US entity, or whatever, and then the status as active. So it'll download everything that is active. So any combination of these pointed columns, single or multiple, you can just put everything on the sheet and you can download via sheet using those parameters. Okay, so let's look at the columns that we got. Looks like a lot of things are non-mandatory. So when I try to trim down, I get a lot of times these questions of when I'm trimming down, how do I know that I'm not blowing away something that is required? So what I do is I do it in incremental steps. So let's say these are all the columns that I see and I don't really need these. I'm looking at the values. There's not much maintenance I'm going to do on these. So when I want to remove them, I usually go in baby steps. So I'll just take these column labels. I want the finish date. So I'll just take the column labels. I plug them off and park them somewhere else. So that way I have visibility into the data that's underneath. I still know what the columns were originally. I don't lose the connection, but at the same time, I am able to do a quick test if the integrator, the sheet is happy or not without these, in the absence of these columns. So that's a very quick and easy way. I'll do the same on the line level. So these are all the tasks, as I said, about 400 plus tasks that have been downloaded very simplistically here in a little table format. So I can go in here and look at the columns I might not need. So what I am going to do is just put the task actual start date. So anything beyond, maybe I can just park it aside, do the same. Okay. All right, now let's say so this could be, if I do a validation on this and it runs fine, I'll be able to remove these entirely during an upload. All right, so that's my quick and easy way to park it aside, and I'll do a validation very quickly and then remove them for good. So I'll get to that. Before that, I just wanted to point to a few other useful columns or useful features here that are built in. Let's say now I have these dates. Okay, so let's say I want to update all of these project actual start date, the task actual start date. Whatever was in October, I just want to go ahead and increment that, or maybe, put a start date of November 1st, like this one has started. So there are many of them with October 1st as the start date. I want to put an actual start date to that. Oh, this is 2021. Anyway, yeah, whatever the date is, we'll just go ahead and increment it by 15. So I could go about doing this plus 15, or this plus whatever the duration is. So I can do that one at a time. Of course, I can do Excel being copy paste. I can do it this way, right? But another little neat feature rolled in within here is this gray row running on the top. Whenever there is a fill all kind of value like this, you don't have to worry about copying, pasting on every data row. You can just put it once on top here. So you can put 10, 16 up top here once, and rest assured that it's going to be pull down when I'm doing an upload. So whenever it's blank, it'll get pulled down from here. Whenever I want a different value, I can just overwrite it here. Okay, so that's another feature that you can do when there is a blanket fill all kind of a value for all the rows. This can also be a formula. So it could also be what we were doing before, plan start date plus 15, and it'll function the same. Okay, so when it comes down, it'll just reference its own column A for its own row, and it'll increment that. All right, so I want to do this, but for a few of the tasks only, not for all the tasks. As you might know, some of you might know that when you do an upload, it's going to go and scan all of these tasks, which could run into 400, 500, sometimes thousands of tasks. That's a lot of work when I'm not updating anything. So sometimes you want to pick and choose the tasks that you want to update. You want to break it off into multiple records. You want to separate them into different headers. So how do you do that? Okay, so there is a neat little feature again that I wanted to touch upon today, and that is called Normalize and Denormalize, where you will start repeating your headers. As you may know that More4apps, our tools require the headers to be just spelled out once, and then the details are multi-line, but the header doesn't repeat. Due to this, what happens is that when you do an upload, all of the child records get uploaded, validated and uploaded. If you want to avoid that, you want to pick and choose just the top 3 or 4, what I can do is I go in here and I do a denormalize. This is called a normalized format where things are collapsed and rolled up into one header. If I want to denormalize, it will split the header into multiple lines for each of the detail lines. So multiple advantages to that. One is, of course, that each header, each row is separate now. Once this is done, you will be having multiple rows, as you can see here. So each row is separate. Remember, these columns are not existent anymore for the integrator. That's why no work was done on them. But each of these now have become a separate header. So now I can pick and choose if I just want to update a few tasks. Additionally, the advantage to this is that I can even do some sorting. So I can go highlight this entire data set, okay? And I can even do some sorting now or filtering. For that, sometimes there should be no blanks, as you might know, okay? So I'm just going to highlight all of these and I'm going to do a sorting based off of, let's say, the planned start date, which is column AS. So I go into data. Now this is going back into the regular Excel functionality. I pick up sort and I can pick on column AS, oldest to newest. That sounds good. And I can sort everything based on the planned start date. So that all the October starting tasks are all on top. And now I can just do a selective update on these, on the actual start date. So the moment we did the normalize, it got the default values down. That's why you see that there are values assigned to every one of them, but not everything is updated. So wherever it was blank, it took the default values, and now it's up to us to tell where to update. Okay, so I can just do a handful of these and update them. Again, I can use update records on top here. So the action, I can put one blanket value instead of putting update on every header. I just put it once here. The same functionality of default values. I can put the action once, and rest assured, if I highlight all of these and update records is the action that's going to stick on all of these. The difference between update and update records, that's also another thing we get asked a lot of times. Update records is something you do at the top level, and it'll cascade down to all the lower child sections. So you don't have to put update at the lower child section level again. It saves you the effort of going to every section and putting an update in each of the child or the sub-child sections. You can just put it once as update records and it'll cascade down. That's the difference between update and update records. So I put it just once on the top. I've sorted it. I put the formulas to increment and put the actual start date 15 days ahead of the planned start date. And now I can pick how many I want to update, highlight those and update and upload. Okay. Before that, let's get rid of these. Seems like the validation and everything happened fine. So I'm just going to get rid of these columns. So you saw that I could do it in a little piecemeal kind of an approach where I just park the columns first. If it complained about something, I could easily bring it back. I can just say, let's say, oh, capitalizable is something I would have liked to have. I can just bring it back. I still have the data still there. Okay, so it's very easy to test out in small steps whether or not it's going to function without the column or whether or not I can carry on my task without that column. So let's remove them now that we don't need these at the header level as well as the child level. And then I have a nice compact kind of a layout. Okay, so this looks much better now. I just have the header level and then the task level all together. And then I can look at these task numbers, parent task number, and then highlight the exact set I want, not all of them. I just want to go up till maybe task 900, not anymore. And I just upload selected on this. And it's just going to go through this set here. It's not going to go beyond because we have separated them. The moment it encounters another header, it assumes that you have separated the records. It won't go any more beyond. That's the way to separate them out. So you could even just put the header, copy the header, put it on row 34, and then that way it'll stop at that. It won't go any beyond. Okay, so this comes accepted. It didn't go any beyond. Okay, so that's the way to separate it out. Whenever you want a smaller subset of details or child records, just stick in the header and it becomes a separator for that upload. All right, let's go to, we already know about the data forms. I believe I just wanted to show it. Whenever you're in doubt, you can bring it up and you can pull up from the list of values within here if you want to make any updates and you don't know the exact value. All right, let me go back to a few other things that we were going to cover. We talked about the default values. And I had a little cheat sheet of what I was going to talk about today. So this is the data form where you can pick up from the list of values. All right, let's go to this. So we talked about normalize, denormalize, update tasks. Let's talk about the DFFs, how flex fields are listed here. So across our products, flex fields are always available in the section called DFF, and the attribute columns are pulled in. When you hover over them, it will automatically pull the context and the column name that you have defined in your flex field definition. This is valid even when you're generating a new sheet. There's no configuration needed for this. When I create a new sheet and I pull up the projects module and I go to the financial projects integrator and select this, it will select all the columns. And if we hover over the DFFs, automatically it would have all the contexts and the context sensitive attribute names if you hover over them. So that's an easy way. I've seen many of the users actually stick in the name up top here so that you know without even, without even bringing up the form or without going into the comments, you know exactly what it is. So I've seen people do that. You can use any of these rows 8 and above for any kind of comments, instructions, any of these rows could be utilized for that. So that's a common thing I've seen many of the users do. Now we talked about, we saw how when you create a new sheet, it's generating all the columns and everything. So it's pretty large when you generate a new sheet, and it's quite some work to trim it down, to bring it down to some kind of a sizable format. I tend to share my layouts when I'm doing a demo, when I work with you all to do a POC. I tend to share my trimmed down sheets, whatever I have built for my updates, for creation of projects and various scenarios. So that becomes a starting point. But going forward, I wanted to give a little sneak peek into how some new features are going to be introduced where it's easy to pick the exact layout that you want to work with. So when you create a new sheet going forward in a few few releases, you'll see that instead of seeing a new sheet with everything, we are going to give you a column picker like this. So as soon as you create new sheet, you get this kind of a design your sheet pop-up window where you can pick and choose the columns, and the base minimum are already marked, as you can see, whichever is required that the wizard, or sorry, the integrator cannot function without. Those are already pre-selected. You cannot uncheck them. So that also solves the question of what is absolutely needed and required for the integrator to function. That already answers that. And then on top of that, you can pick and choose whatever you want. It'll also have a description in this fashion. Okay, so this is from another integrator, the purchase orders, but this is for our projects integrator. So you can pick and choose, generate the sheet, and it'll just be tailored to your layout. So that saves you the effort of generating everything and trimming down or getting hold of templates from other users or from More4apps. So that's up and coming, brand new feature. I also wanted to give you a little, little pointer. I won't demonstrate this functionality, but I wanted to give you a little pointer to this feature here where you can restrict on every user guide, let me point to the user guide, how to get to the user guide. So within here on the help menu, you have the user guide. When you open it up, it comes up in a browser window. And this is how the user guide presents itself. So if you go into any of the integrators under getting started, there is a restriction of integrators. So depending upon your role and privilege, you would have access to all the functions, let's say amending contracts and award budgets and all of that. But despite your roles and privileges, you want to probably limit which users you want to give access to. So that kind of restriction is allowed here. You can go into this section, restriction of the integrator operations. Okay, some of the operations could be limited using profile options. So you can set these at a user level. You can disable them or enable them when it's exclude. Okay, so you can exclude amend contracts function. You can exclude budgets for certain users. So despite having the privileges and the roles assigned, you can still exclude some of them. And this is all listed. All the profile options are listed under the restriction. This is also a recently introduced feature, and that's why I wanted to point to this. Okay, so this gives you an extra layer of control and security as such. It'll give you that you don't have sufficient permissions when you try to pull up, let's say, the award budgets. All right. And then we always encourage you all to come into the community. That's also a recently introduced feature where we are building a thriving and buzzing community of More4apps users. It's called community.more4apps.com. Just go in there. Even without creating a login, you have access to look at the user guides and stuff like that. But we highly encourage you to create a login. And once you log in, you can participate in discussions, forums. You can download any of our tools just to try out, or just to look at the layout. And then of course a license key is needed to try anything on the instance, but you can always look at the sheets. You can ask a question, or you can even answer any existing questions once you have a login created. Okay. So that's how it looks like. And already few questions are getting answered. And you can, once you have a login, you can use that email ID and password. And you can track your cases as well. Okay, so you can actually go in and keep track of all your cases at one place. It's your portal into the More4apps. So all of your cases will be also collected here. All right. So those are the salient features that I want to cover today. I wanted to, and besides that, here, sometimes when you're working with our support team, they might ask you for diagnostics or turning on the log files. That's usually within this, where you can save the log file once you turn it on and perform your function, do any kind of upload. It'll save a log file. You can just save it anywhere where you can retrieve it and then perform your functions, and it's able to keep track of what you have done and get a copy of that and send it to the support team if it's needed. All right, so I'll cast a glance on the Q&A and the chat if there is anything pouring in. I've covered most of what I had given in the abstract in the summary.
Okay. Yeah, I have some private questions in the chat, so I can relay those to you as well. If anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. It's probably easier than typing it in. But one of the first ones, and I think you kind of touched base on this, especially with the new feature. Is there a way to trim down the sheet at the onset of creating a sheet? Basically mass trimming the sheet before starting. And I think that you kind of touched base a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we talked about the up and coming feature on the template generator, so that'll take care of that. But other than that, as of now, usually it's best to share your sheets once it's trimmed down and take that as the baseline and add on new columns. But yeah, this is a very up and coming. In the next release, you should have this feature where you can pick your template columns right at the onset, even before getting the whole mass of columns there. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. And we do have a follow-up to that. It's how do you just create a template to begin with? Do you have any like tips?
So when you are starting afresh, yeah, you would be just on a Excel sheet, let's say here. And yeah, what we say, so if you have a copy from anyone, you can, let's say this is my existing sheet from another user. I can actually go in here and copy this active sheet without the data. So you can copy from an existing user's trim down sheet, or you can get hold of it from the More4apps person when I'm demoing, or we have some sheets that we use. If you get hold of that and you want to eliminate the data, you can just say copy active sheet, and it'll generate the same exact layout on a different sheet without the data or anything else. So it will be a clean start on that same active sheet. So that's one way, but yes, if you don't have access to any of that and you're just starting afresh, then basically you have to create a new sheet which has everything from scratch, and then you'll have to filter it down. But yeah, I highly recommend that you just get hold of a copy of an existing layout from other users or from us to get
Yeah, we have
started.
some example sheets too that I know that we could probably send out if you would like those.
Right. Yeah, but wait for this upcoming new feature and it'll get you a head start right away.
Okay, I have two like private questions as well.
Mhm.
If I'm updating a task, what would be the minimum amount of header info I would need?
So to tie back the task to the header, yeah, usually it's just the project number, name, and organization. And yeah, I could give you a trim down. I'll have to try a few iterations, but I think you can get rid of the start date, end date, legal entity, and the rest should be sufficient. Even the source template name is not needed. So I think this should be good enough, but I'll have to try it out if you want. We can, we can just exchange emails and I can send you a sheet after I've tried out removing other stuff. But I would think that this is the base minimum and you can get down to the tasks.
Okay. We have another one. So each time there is a new version released, we need to download a new sheet, correct?
Most often we don't have too many new releases, new revisions, but yes, if you have received a notification there is a new release, you will have the link to the zip file and that will have all of the installation of the BI reports and everything. Your sheet should function the same though. You should not, there is no sheet included in our zip file. In our cloud installation zip file, there is only BI reports and add-ins. So you have to rerun the add-in, which will install this, revise this add-in, and then you can generate a new sheet or you can continue working with the existing sheet. It'll usually be in the release notes if you need to regenerate the sheet, if you need to reinstall the BI reports or not, or just run the add-in, and then you're good to go. I hope I'm answering the question. So to summarize, basically, it'll have an executable to run, which will refresh this add-in. Sometimes that alone is sufficient. You can continue using your sheets. Look at the release notes. If it says you have to refresh your BI reports, then you have to go in and reinstall the BI reports. If it says that you have to regenerate the sheets, then you might have to, copy into a new sheet or your layout and generate a new sheet afresh. But most likely, yeah, you should be able to continue with your existing sheets that you have already built. There is no workbook attached to our product. You generate your own sheets and maintain your own workbooks.
Your hand if you have follow-up questions. It's easier to talk about it versus
Yeah,
typing
go
it.
ahead.
I
Yeah,
can
go
always
ahead.
unmute you too. But we do have a few other ones that came in. Um, we'll go through the Q&A one and then I'll get the one in the chat. If a new DFF was created, would it get to pull into the template? Would you be able to
You'll
pull it
have
into the
to,
template?
yes. So when you make the connection, you can add that column into the configuration will get pulled in when you pull up the data forms. You will have the information related to that, but you just have to add that column. Once you know that attribute, you'll have to add that column in. But the configuration and everything gets pulled from the session. So let's say task attribute 3 got added. I can just very well just go in and add task attribute 3 and all of its information, the configuration gets refreshed from the instance. Okay, so I can just very well just go in and pull up the data form. and it'll know exactly what task attribute 3 got added and what are its user-friendly name, the business name to it, what are the list of values associated, everything gets pulled in here. Okay, but yes, you have to add it manually to the sheet or generate a new sheet.
I have another question that relates back to the previous one. It's how are we notified of updates and new releases? That was in the chat.
So that you can sign up for the updates on your products. And if you're added to the mailing list, every time there is a new release, you get notified that you get the download link, you get some release notes as well. What were the updates? And I can point to how to sign up. The community is a very good way to do that. Once you register yourself on the community, you're automatically added to the mailing lists and you can get notified. But I can give you more details on that. I'll get to with my support team and send you some details.
Yeah, we can do that. Another question. Can project resources be updated using a similar template?
Yes, I believe we have. So that's a project integrator specific question. So I think resource assignments can be done, planning RBS, and resource assignment can also be managed here. If I generate a new sheet, you'll have access to plan resource assignments. This is the one. If you don't have this, you can just download the latest version and you should have that. Project references, and this is the resource assignments on the task. I hope that answers the question. We can walk through it in a separate demo if you need.
I have another one like in a private chat. Can you create a new task for an existing project?
Yes, we can do that. Let's go back here. What you can do is just insert a row when you want to add a new task. And then instead of update, your action will be create, and then you can add 920 and whatever task. Sorry, that's a parent. I can just say 900 and I can add 900.11 and start with all the task details. And that's it. During the upload, the only thing that is different is this action of create. So you can add a new task. As long as Oracle allows a certain function, that's supported here. Any follow-ups?
Yeah, does anybody have any other further questions? I know that you probably are thinking a lot. So when we send out the follow-up, you can always respond to that as well. I can put Rachana's info in there and you can email her, email us back. But yeah, any other questions before hopping off? You can raise your hand too if it takes too long to type. That's okay. All right, I don't know. I don't think we have any more. Oh, wait. Oh, we do. Great. Oh, okay. This is another follow-up question to this. Does this work on project changes as well or charges, project charges?
So costs is what probably you're alluding to. So we have costs and cost adjustments. If that's what you're alluding to, costs and cost adjustments on projects. So you can assign it. You can create an expenditure batch and put expenditures against a task, against a project, and then on that batch, you can do an adjustment. If you later on want to make a change to those costs. And again, this warrants a whole demo, but I can show you the sheets, but we could definitely get together on a full demo. So this is the expenditure. You can put a expenditure batch, put items against the project and the task, and upload this to create expenditure batches. And then if you want to do edits to this or changes to it, you can do a cost adjustment on processed or unprocessed costs.
Yeah, she's asking, can you transfer costs between tasks?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the transfer. You can transfer based on transaction number and you can do an adjustment type. And this is the new transferred project cost and project task that you want to transfer to. So this is
Then we
part of
have-
cost
oh, go ahead.
adjustments.
We do have another question is, will there be similar demos over the other modules? Since this is our first one, I think Rachna, you just picked projects just to be pretty standard. I think that's what you said in the beginning.
Yes.
But if there
Yeah.
is a particular module that you'd like to look at, let us know in the survey so that we can do other stuff in the future too. We'd like to get more specific for
Right.
different modules in the future.
Right, as you might have seen in the abstract and in what I covered today, it's mostly a very generic tips that would be across all the products, like the default, normalize, denormalize. These were all horizontal kind of features. It was not very product specific. But yes, if you can send your feedback, and we would love to cover any specific projects in depth if you want to go that way.
Everyone just has
listening.
some projects related questions, which is great too.
Mhm.
And we have another one. So let's say I have a list of projects and I'd like to validate that they exist in the system, not uploading, just validating.
Mhm.
What do you do?
Yes. So validate is an option here. So I can just say validate all, and it'll just go down and make sure all the rows are valid. So when you are validating the rows, it's obviously validating the name of the project and make sure that everything is in line with what Oracle requires. If there's a typo or anything, it'll just reject that and say that it's not a valid project. So that's the validate button here. Instead of doing an upload, just say validate all or validate selected. It'll just give you this kind of a feedback. And let me show what it'll do if something is invalid. So this is how it will reject something that is not a valid project number or a name. Project name does not exist, cannot be validated. So it just throws an error. So it picks all the errored records and highlights them for you, and the others are all valid.
Okay. Any other questions? We are getting near the end, so if you have any other further questions, feel free to throw them out, raise your hand. But like I said, if anything pops up, you can always respond to us in our follow-up email or just reach out on your own and we can get that answer for you. All right, any other last words, Rachna, before I close it out?
No, we're happy to have this, and we'll be listening into your feedback and doing more of these as you steer us towards whichever areas you like. So thank you very much for your time today, and hope you get more productivity out of this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rachna, and thank you everyone for joining. Like I said, in the survey, you can fill out if there's any other topics that you would like in the future, whether they be more specific, anything that you experience. We appreciate any feedback since this is like the very first one. So please let us know what you would like to do. And then we'll get a follow-up email with the recording tomorrow. So keep a lookout for that. And if you have any questions, feel free to just reach out. And I'll also include Rachna's information. But yeah, thank you again, and I hope you have a great day, everybody.